Once upon a time, there was a brave knight called George. George had lots of adventures as he travelled by horse across many lands. One day he came to a small village and met a man who lived in a cave next to the village. The hermit told the knight about the awful things that were happening there. A terrible dragon had come to live in the lake and attacked the village every day. The villagers didn't know what to do. First, they gave the dragon all their food. But the dragon just took the food and still attacked the village. So then the villagers gave the dragon all the animals from their farms. The dragon took all the animals, but continued to attack the villagers. So then they gave the dragon all their gold and jewels. The dragon took all their money, but still was not satisfied. The king sent his army to try and capture the dragon. But the dragon was too strong, and the knights of the army were too scared, and they ran away. With nothing left to give, the king could only think of one thing to help protect his people. He sent his only daughter, the princess, to the lake to wait for the dragon. When George heard this, he rode as fast as he could to the lake. Just then, the dragon jumped out from the lake and was going to eat the princess. George attacked the dragon. He fought very bravely, won the fight, and killed the dragon. George and the princess returned to the village, and everyone was very pleased that they would have no more problems with the dragon. Today, the story of George's bravery is remembered, and George is known as the patron saint of many countries.
Have you heard of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster? Loch Ness is a very large, deep lake in Scotland. Many people think a monster lives in it. The first report of Nessie was back in the 6th century. A man called Saint Columba reported seeing a monster in the water, but he told the monster to go back, and he was safe.
Go back!
OK, if you insist. Then, in 1933, Nessie was seen again by George Spicer and his wife. She crossed the road in front of their car. What a beautiful day for a picnic. The next year, a photo was taken of Nessie, which became very famous. It was taken by a doctor, but the photo turned out to be fake. Since then, there have been several more sightings of Nessie. Some people have tried to take photos and videos, but Nessie is very shy, and the pictures are not very clear. The paparazzi are everywhere. People have also tried exploring the lake, but it is very deep and very dark. Some people watched the lake, while other people used equipment like underwater cameras, microphones and sonar to scan the lake carefully. People have even explored the lake in submersibles. No one has found anything definite. There are lots of possible explanations for what people have seen in Loch Ness. Maybe the monster is just a giant eel, a large bird, a tree, or a seal. A few people even think it could be a plesiosaur, which is a type of dinosaur. Or maybe I'm just unique. So, What do you think? Do you believe that Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, really exists? Stories about Robin Hood for more than 700 years. Nobody knows if he was a real person or an invented character. In the legends, Robin was extremely intelligent and had a playful sense of humour. He loved playing tricks on people.
Pick a card, any card.
The stories say that Robin Hood was a skilled archer, and he always carried a bow and arrow.
Too easy.
He wore green clothes and a hat with a green feather. He lived in Sherwood Forest with a group of outlaws, or criminals, known as his Merry Men. The group included Friar Tuck,
Yummy.
Little John, who was unusually tall,
Little is just my nickname.
and Robin's true love, Maid Marian. Take that! Sherwood Forest was a royal hunting forest near Nottingham in England. Most people thought that forests were dangerous places to go. People travelling through the forests were often robbed by outlaws.
Your money, please, my lord. Oh no, it's Robin Hood.
The stories say that Robin Hood only took money from rich people so that he could give it to people who needed it. So he became famous for robbing from the rich and giving to the poor.
Here you are, my dear.
Oh, thank you, Robin. The Sheriff of Nottingham was Robin's arch enemy. It was the sheriff's job to keep the woods safe and to make sure that nobody stole the king's deer.
What's that? Is that Robin Hood?
The Sheriff of Nottingham tried to catch Robin Hood, but never succeeded.
Oh no, not again.
Centuries ago, people loved to tell each other stories of Robin Hood. Later, he became a famous character in books, and nowadays Robin is still a well-loved hero in literature, theatre, TV and films. Have you heard of Boudica? She was queen of the Iceni, a tribe of people who lived in eastern England in Britain almost 2,000 years ago. Boudica was tall, with very long red hair, and wore a gold necklace and a beautiful brooch. She was very intelligent and had probably been to warrior school, so she knew how to fight. By AD 43, the Romans had conquered southern England. At first, they allowed Boudica and her husband to continue to rule. But when Boudica's husband died, the Romans took all his land and property. They decided to rule the Iceni, and they treated them very badly. So, in AD 60 or 61, Boudica and the Iceni rebelled against the Romans, together with other tribes who were also treated badly by the Romans. Boudica and her large army defeated one Roman army and destroyed the capital of Roman Britain, Colchester. In Colchester, she destroyed the temple built for Emperor Claudius. They also destroyed 2 more cities. Many people died. Now I am fighting for my freedom. We must win this battle or die. Let the men live as slaves if they want. I will not. Finally, Boudica and her army were defeated. The surviving Iceni people ran away or were turned into slaves. Boudica probably killed herself with poison. Her body has never been found. The rebellion was so shocking to Emperor Nero, the ruler of the Roman Empire, that he wanted to withdraw from Britain. In the end, the Romans occupied Britain for over 350 years more. But they also treated the British people more fairly and introduced lower taxes. Boudica has been an inspiration to other female leaders, such as Elizabeth I and Queen Victoria. Her rebellion was one of the most significant against the Roman Empire. Now, Boudica is remembered as one of Britain's greatest heroines.
Time, there was a poor orphan boy called Dick Whittington. The people in his village believed that the streets of London were paved with gold, so Dick decided to travel there and become a rich man. Dick walked for many days, but when he arrived in London, there were no streets of gold. Tired and hungry, he fell asleep on the steps of a great house. The house belonged to a rich businessman who found Dick and gave him a job cleaning the kitchen. Dick worked very hard and was happy. He had enough to eat, and at night he could sleep by the fire. There was a problem, though. At night, rats ran around the kitchen and kept him awake. So Dick went out and found the fastest rat-catching cat in London. The cat caught all the rats that came into the house, and Dick could sleep at night. The businessman heard about the amazing cat and asked Dick if he could take it on his ship to catch rats on his next journey. Dick agreed, but was very sad to see the cat go. While the businessman was away, the other servants were very mean to Dick, so Dick decided to run away. But as he was leaving, one of the great church bells rang. It seemed to say, "Turn back, Dick Whittington, Mayor of London." So Dick came back to the house, and soon the businessman returned. He was very happy because Dick's cat had caught all the rats on the ship. He gave Dick a reward and promoted him to his assistant. Dick worked hard for the businessman and learned everything he could. Eventually, he married the businessman's daughter and started a very successful business of his own. And yes, he did become Mayor of London. Have you read The Tale of Peter Rabbit? It's a very famous children's book, written by Beatrix Potter. Beatrix was born in 1866. She and her brother kept many small animals as pets: rabbits, hedgehogs, guinea pigs, mice, frogs, and even bats. They both liked to draw their pets, but Beatrix liked drawing animals from her own imagination most. She also loved exploring and drawing nature when they visited beautiful places like Scotland and the Lake District. Beatrix was very smart and studied archaeological artifacts, fossils, and insects. But she was especially interested in mycology, the study of mushrooms. She even wrote a scientific paper about it, but women at that time couldn't be scientists. To earn some money, Beatrix started drawing cards with animals. She liked writing and illustrating letters, too. One day, she wrote a letter to her friend's son and told the story of Peter Rabbit. She decided to make the story into a book. The Tale of Peter Rabbit was published in 1902, and it was a great success. She wrote, illustrated, and published many more books. She also created dolls, painting books, games, and other items based on her characters. In 1905, Beatrix bought a farm in the Lake District. She learned about farming and bought more farms and land to help preserve the landscape. She enjoyed country life very much and was very active in protecting the environment. When Beatrix died, she left almost all her farms and land to the National Trust. a charity which protects historic places and landscapes. You can even visit Hilltop Farm today, which is exactly like it was when Beatrix lived there. So if you haven't read The Tale of Peter Rabbit or other Beatrix Potter books, why not visit your local library or bookshop today? Florence Nightingale was a nurse who saved many lives in the 19th century. She was named after the city of Florence in Italy, where her parents went after they got married in 1818. Her family was rich, and they had 2 homes in Britain, as well as servants. Florence was an unusual young woman for her time because she didn't want to go to parties and get married. She wanted to be a nurse and help people. Her family didn't want her to become a nurse because hospitals back then were dirty, horrible places. They were worried about her. In 1851, Florence went to Germany and learned all about nursing. It was hard work, but she loved it. In 1854, lots of British soldiers went to fight in the Crimean War. Army hospitals were filled with injured men, but there were no nurses and many men died. Florence and a team of nurses went to help. Florence worked 20 hours a day to make the army hospital a cleaner and safer place. She brought the men fresh food, she cleaned the hospital beds, and she used clean bandages on the wounded soldiers. Soon, fewer men were dying. At night, Florence walked around the hospital. She talked to the injured soldiers and helped the men to write letters to their families. She carried a lamp, and the soldiers called her the Lady with the Lamp. When Florence returned to England, people called her a heroine because of her amazing work in the Crimean War. Queen Victoria wrote her a letter to say thank you. She continued to work hard in Britain to improve hospitals, and she was given a medal called the Order of Merit. She was the first woman to receive this honor.
Emmeline Pankhurst was born in Manchester, in the north of England, in 1858. Back then, British women couldn't vote in elections, but men could. Emmeline went to school in Paris, France. As she grew up, she became interested in politics and wanted to create a more equal society for women and men. She wanted women to have the same rights as men, such as the right to an education, the right to have a good job, and perhaps most importantly, the right to vote. In 1888, the girls who worked at the Bryant and May match factory in London went on strike. They stopped working and asked the owner of the factory to improve their terrible working conditions. They worked 14 hours a day and were fined for dropping matches on the floor. Many of the girls were ill because they worked with dangerous chemicals. Emmeline supported the strike. Emmeline formed the Women's Social and Political Union, also called the Suffragettes, in 1903. The Suffragettes were a group who fought for women's rights, especially the right to vote. They published a newspaper called Votes for Women, which sold 20,000 copies a week. The suffragettes also held demonstrations, and they often broke the law by smashing windows or chaining themselves to fences to protest. In 1913, a suffragette called Emily Davison was killed when she threw herself under the King's horse at a famous horse race as a protest because the government refused to give women the right to vote. In 1918, the British government gave women aged over 30 the right to vote, although men could vote when they were 21. Women were finally allowed to vote at the same age as men shortly after Emmeline died, on the 14th of June 1928. Emmeline Pankhurst is sometimes described as Isaac Newton was born in Lincolnshire, England, in 1643, where he grew up on a farm. When he was a boy, he made lots of brilliant inventions, like a windmill to grind corn, a water clock, and a sundial. However, Isaac didn't get brilliant marks at school. When he was 18, Isaac went to study at Cambridge University. He was very interested in physics, mathematics, and astronomy. But in 1665, the Great Plague, which was a terrible disease, spread in England, and Cambridge University had to close down. Isaac returned home to the farm. Isaac continued studying and experimenting at home. One day he was drinking a cup of tea in the garden. He saw an apple fall from a tree.
Why do apples fall down instead of up?
From this, he formed the theory of gravity. Gravity is an invisible force which pulls objects towards the Earth and keeps the planets moving around the Sun. Isaac was fascinated by light. He discovered that white light is in fact made up of all the colours of the rainbow. Isaac also invented a special reflecting telescope using mirrors. It was much more powerful than other telescopes. Isaac made another very important discovery, which he called his 3 laws of motion. These laws explain how objects move. Isaac's laws are still used today for sending rockets into space. Thanks to his discoveries, Isaac became rich and famous. However, he had a bad temper and often argued with other scientists.
You stole my discovery.
Sir Isaac Newton died in 1727, aged 85. He was buried along with English kings and queens in Westminster Abbey in London. He was one of the greatest scientists and mathematicians who has ever lived.
Elizabeth was born nearly 500 years ago, in 1533. Her father, King Henry VIII, had 6 wives. When Elizabeth was 2, her father ordered her mother's execution. Off with her head. Elizabeth was very clever, but she had a difficult childhood with her bad-tempered father and so many stepmothers. She was put in prison in the Tower of London for 2 months when she was 20. Elizabeth became queen in 1558.
Your sister is dead. You are the new queen.
The English people liked Elizabeth and called her Good Queen Bess. But Elizabeth was often bad-tempered and bossy.
I said, give me my wig.
Elizabeth sent explorers sailing around the world. In 1577, Sir Francis Drake set sail in his ship, the Pelican.
Goodbye, Francis. Discover some new countries and bring me back some Spanish treasure.
In 1588, the Spanish king sent a huge fleet of ships to attack England. It was called the Spanish Armada. Elizabeth gave a famous speech to inspire her army.
My loving people, I know I have the body of a weak woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. I will live or die amongst you all, but I know we shall have a famous victory.
Spain lost the battle. Elizabeth's cousin, Mary, was Queen of Scotland. Mary had to run away from Scotland, and she asked Elizabeth to protect her.
Please protect me, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth was afraid that Mary wanted to become Queen of England. She locked Mary up in the Tower of London. 19 years later, she ordered Mary's execution.
Off with her head!
Elizabeth was queen for 45 years. It was a golden age for England. She died in 1603, aged 70, and James I, Mary's son, became king.
Queen Elizabeth is dead. Long live King James!